Every single person in this world has a story to share. Your story is your superpower, and it's unique to you. In sharing it with the world, you can impact millions of people. If you keep it to yourself, you are doing the world a disservice. This is Dela. I'm the host of Dela's Voice, and I help you share your superpower with the world.
Hello and happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of Dela's Voice, where we interview amazing entrepreneurs, amazing individuals, coaches, healers, other hosts who are impacting the world in such a positive way. It's absolutely my pleasure, and I consider this a blessing to be able to be here with you today. What can I say about my guest today? She has shown up for the world in such a powerful way. And despite everything that has come her way, she has been able to rise above and continue on her path. And she is the reason why we call this show Do Not Give Up. We'll hear from Kate Pejman today and the art of resilience in achieving what you set out to achieve. It is the best way to start this first week of 2021. So it is my pleasure to have my guest on. A little bit about Kate. Kate has a background in civil engineering and international development. She's worked in a lot of different projects. She's also been involved in Engineers Without Borders. I want to hear more about that. And also Habitat for Humanity. So you can already tell what kind of a soul she is. So Kate today is the creator and the host of her own show called the Benevolent series. And it's an online talk show series that delivers much needed benevolent local and global news to its audience, as well as showcases the untold stories of humans who are making a kind and generous difference in the world, all in service of connecting us to our more benevolent self. This is really super important because all we hear in the news today is sadness, catastrophes, pandemic. No news is good news. Have you heard that before? Well, not to Kate. She's made the decision to bring out the good news and is so needed in the world. So please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Kate Pejman on the show. Hey!
Hi, Dela! Oh my God, just listening to you talk was so joyful. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm so excited. I'm so honored to be with you and to be part of the amazing group of people that you interview. Thank you for having me with you. Thank you for all of your amazing listeners, because I do know it's a work day and people are probably, at work. So if anybody's listening and are on this call, I'm just so grateful to be with you and to have me on your amazing show.
Well, thank you, my dear. It's so nice to have you. It is actually going to be such a blessing to hear from you today. And the work that you're doing, it's so great, Kate. And I want to go there for a second because obviously you felt that there was a need for something like this in the world. And right? And so I do want to know how you got started, but let's take a moment. And as you said, let's say hello to all the listeners. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be an hour of inspiration, positivity that you don't want to miss. So please share this with your loved ones. Let them also benefit from this. Let us all spread joy in the world, in our community, which is really, really needed. Okay, so we're going to go back to Kate now and start with you. Give us a little bit of a background story of how this all came about.
Surely, I honestly don't even know where to begin, but I will tell you the biggest drives behind the creation of the Benevolent series. Firstly, the recent reasons was that I'll give you a couple of examples. I was just scrolling through my Facebook and I saw one of these sponsored ads that say, if you don't have a successful podcast, if you've never written a book, if you haven't really if you don't have years of experience, come and join us. This will help you. You don't need any of these things to be successful. And I just thought, oh no, you don't want to say that, because I think in reality things take so much time to develop, and we all really suck when we start. This might happen a few times. My ears are might be but I think there's this culture of immediate success and immediate gratification and immediate attention, and it's so toxic. And a few years before that, I really enjoyed the show The View, which was one of my favorite shows. And Barbara Walters, whose work I've followed for years, she was part of the show and she was a host of that show. And she decided to resign and leave that show. And her reason was that she said, I just don't think that stories of educated, powerful women who are doing good for the world are really getting covered, and she just didn't want to be part of that work.
Sorry, Kate. I think we need to lose your earbuds because it's
No.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I think yeah, because it's not coming. Your voice is not coming clearly, and I want people to be able to hear you. So go ahead if you want, and just maybe not use them, and I'll just mute myself when you're talking, so we don't have that crackling sound. I know.
Yeah. Should I restart talking about all the issues that I had with some other shows?
No, no. There won't be any issues. Are they off right now? Because you sound okay.
Yes, they're off. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, yay.
So anyways, I just one of the things I came across is that I saw really powerful women deciding not to take on projects or be part of these really big platforms that provide stories and news to us. So I just thought we need new programs out there. So that's just from maybe a professional look into why I started the Benevolent series. But what I would really share with you, I think any of us who do or create anything in the world, it comes down to such a personal story. And mine is, I think, from the time that I honestly opened my eyes and kind of took in the world, I just noticed things that were really off. And what I mean by that is that, first of all, I'm Afghan. I was born in Kabul, Afghanistan. When I was 2 years old, because my father was teaching as a professor in Iran, my entire family moved to Iran. And before we moved to Canada, which is where the Benevolent series is based, I think the interaction between Afghans and Iranians since during my entire childhood was just something that made me have so many questions about the world. So for anybody who might not know the history of Afghans and Iranians, there's a lot of turmoil, there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of issues, there's a lot of judgment and a lot of issues between the two cultures and the two countries. So when I lived in Iran, I always thought I always thought I'm from there, but I'm not from there. And I would always see the groups that people would be divided into. I would see the locals and then the others. So from a very early age, I think a sense of belonging to the world and feeling like where I was kind of mine, and I was a part of it, and things belonged to me and I belonged to other people. I think that relationship with the world was challenged for me right away. I noticed that there's a difference between people, and how much love and and respect and kindness and the jobs you get, the jobs you don't get, it comes down to such interesting attributes, like where you're from and what accent you speak with. So once I turned 11 years old, my entire family then moved to Canada. And then in Canada, everyone's kind of has come from a different background. So I started thinking about and working on this relationship that I had with other people and countries and cultures where I had to kind of figure out, okay, who am I and where do I belong? And how can I even heal and fix my own relationship and my own my own sense of belonging in the world? And one of the reasons that the Benevolent series came to existence is because I always thought I was such a odd case. Like I thought I was like the other. I don't know if anybody has watched that scary movie called The Others. My life was kind of like that. I was the other, and I think I would always feel like I'm different, and not in a necessarily good way. I think if you're different, we try to empower that so much here, but being different had translated into very big heartbreaks for me. For example, I remember when I was in Iran, I was selected to I think I was in grade 5 at the time. I was in grade 5 and I loved track and field, even in grade 5. And I'm so glad that we had a school that would really nourish your track and field skills. And I was really, really good. And I got selected to go participate in a local competition. And everything was great. Our coach was great. All the students were great. And I remember the day came when they were like, wait, Katayoon, which is my Farsi name, Katayoon is not Iranian. We're not sure if she can actually compete. And so my poor mother had to like go and like discuss what the situation was. And I never understood any of it at the time, but I remember being very little and like looking at my mom being in a very intense conversation with our school principal, and somehow it all got resolved. But I knew there was something wrong. So what I did is I did compete in the local competition that was happening, but Dela, I made sure that I would lose. I intentionally ran so slowly that I think everyone like stood up from the bleachers and was like, why is she running like a turtle? And I think it was my way of kind of saying, you know, like that's my comeback. I'm not gonna be great. So that was my very complicated childhood. And so when we moved to Canada, given that I had a dad who has his bachelor's in journalism, my dad taught all over Iran. When I came here, then I think a lot of families move to a better country, and the parents want their kids to have all the things that they didn't have. If they didn't have a steady job, or if they didn't have income, like a lot of income, or if they didn't have financial security, or if they didn't have job security, or if they didn't have like proper paper security, like immigration paper security, they would really push that on their kids. And I remember when I finished high school, I was like, a part of my brain and my parents always thought that I need to do engineering, or I need to do something that's like very, very responsible. And then I also really had always, again, since I had basically opened my eyes, had been directly impacted by these international laws in different countries, cultures, different religions, different nationalities. And so I was like, I have to figure something out. I have to do engineering, but I also want to do the thing that's me and that really is important to me about the issues that are happening in the world. So I did engineering, and then I was so lucky that there was an elite program that was offered at my university, at the University of Western Ontario, where they let you study engineering and international development at the same time. So then I enrolled in that, and I felt like, okay, the world has come back together in a way that I can be happy and joyful and really engaged. And then when I graduated, and then one other cool thing that I did is that I traveled to northwestern Africa in Ghana, and I did an internship there. And when I was doing an internship there, I saw all these other kids who had a similar background like mine. Like I met this girl who was from Angola, but her family had moved to South Africa, and then they were treated really badly in South Africa. I met another person who had moved from Turkey to Greece and then had been really mistreated. So I was just like, oh, interesting. There is a community of people who are kind of like me and who kind of had to live in two different worlds at all times, and try to prove that they're good and that they're smart and that there's nothing wrong with them really. So, but then when I came back, I went and I started my adult life in engineering. And then it took me a really long time to realize that everything had kind of been fun up to that point, but the world of adulting wasn't that fun. And I couldn't understand how people can just have like very exhausting, tiring 9-to-5 everyday jobs. And then there's so many people who don't really speak up or who don't talk about how tired they are, how burnt out they are, how trapped they feel, how they think that they might feel like they're just living so that they could work. And I was going through a similar thing because in engineering, there's engineering isn't like law, or it isn't like the arts. There is a right answer, and you have to, it's very black and white. And I couldn't find a place in the world where I could do my engineering. I could apply the fact that I was kind of a genius in calculus, but also work on the real world issues. And I remember there was a student a few years behind me at university who was studying the same program, and a friend of mine connected the two of us, and she said, oh my God, I've done engineering and I'm also doing civil engineering. So please tell me what kind of a job you got out in the world. And my friend who had connected two of us was so excited, and she's like, I can't wait to tell this girl to talk to you. I can't wait for you to tell her where to work, where she can find a meaningful workplace. And I just looked at my friend and I said, that space where I'm doing everything that I'm good at, everything that I care about, that space doesn't actually exist in the world. So then I could either just age, and by age I don't mean just in numbers, I mean like in my soul, in my spirit, or I could say maybe I could create this space in which who I am can fit in there. And so the Benevolent series came in place, and one of the very first women that I interviewed and who I asked to share their story was a girl who had done science and had decided to become a communication genius talking about science. So I thought that was really cool. So yeah, I guess there are a lot of personal things that happened to me, as well as real issues here in the North American life, which isn't really that much more fulfilling or satisfying in comparison to like the Middle Eastern world that I came from. And then for somebody who's transitioning and whose family is transitioning, you kind of have to really figure out who you are and what you want to do. And sometimes that place doesn't exist. So then you accept a whole bunch of new problems to try to create that space. And then I think when you try to create that space, you have a lot of other challenges. And then so the mantra, or I think that the logo to the Benevolent series has been don't give up, because you can imagine that trying to figure all of this out is a lot more challenging than you can think. And when you look at an ad that gets that's sponsored and that's flashed in your face 20 times every time you log into Facebook, and people are constantly telling you how fast, like, if you didn't do this and if you didn't do that and if you have no experience and if you didn't put in the hard work and if you didn't work hard and if you didn't sweat for years and if you didn't all those things, it doesn't matter, we can make you successful. And I think that's a very dangerous message to give to anyone.
So thank you so much for sharing this part of your journey, and I can relate to so much of it, Kate, because just like you, I was in my teen years when I immigrated from Iran to France, and then again immigrated to Canada. So I so relate to everything you said about wanting to fit in and belonging and working hard so that you could match up to your counterparts. And so I can relate to all of that. And I think something that I can see right now, and maybe it wasn't so obvious, and I'm hoping there's a message in this for someone who's listening, is that what makes you unique is can be used to your advantage. And so when I was younger, I didn't see it that way. I just wanted to belong. I just wanted to be the same as everybody else. And so that was a roadblock. And whereas I think as I got older and wiser, it became apparent to me that what makes you different is actually your superpower. And so I hope there's a message in that today. And so how do you see yourself in what I just said? What's your take on that?
I think if I were to be totally honest, I think there's a struggle with that all the time, because you accept yourself and you accept your goals, but you still try to cater. I still try to be as good as a friend as I can be, or what I'm trying to say is, it's not like something that you get one day and then everything's perfect. I think in the most smallest ways, we still try to fit in, even as adults, even as mothers, even as students, even as grandparents. There's still a part of us that wants to make everybody happy. So what I've done sort of to kind of make sure I'm on the right ground is, at the end of the day, I know the people that make me be my most authentic self. There are women that I message, there are women whose stories I'm following, there are humans, and not just within my close circle of friends, but even on my Instagram, I follow women that I think speak to exactly what you're talking about. So if something's being sold to me and it's just not me, I don't follow those pages. I don't read that information. But it's just the only way that you can really keep yourself on the course and keep loving who you are and keep valuing who you are is, once you know you're different and what your superpower is, I think you need to surround yourself with people who bring that out in front of your face all the time. And that's kind of a luxury, because we don't have that all the time. Not everyone's going to understand your goal right away. Not everyone's going to understand your new lifestyle right away. So and Dela, to be totally honest, it's taken about 4 to 6 years for me to kind of collect back who I am and to accept all the different parts of me. and I've been through so many workshops, I've been to so many seminars, I've done, I worked with different organizations. I've been through a lot of personal breakups and friendship breakups and all sorts of things. So I would say what I would say is it's been quite a long journey for me to just accept that difference. Because it's one thing to accept your difference, it's another thing to kind of just use it out there and to let it really be seen by a lot of people, because you let the people who love you see you, but you're also letting other people who just want to maybe not support you to see you as well. So for anybody who's struggling, I can say I've spent years, really, really creating a sense of self. It hasn't really happened overnight.
And it's so important. It's such a gratifying realization once you get there. Well, I don't think we can ever quite get there 100%. It's always a growing, it's always a growing experience. But I thank you so much. I appreciate what you just said, and you're totally right. And I mean, you're so young, and I admire that you have come to this realization so early in your life, because for many it takes years. And so, but there's no way it's ever too late for anyone, right? So here you are, decided to start this Benevolent series. And so there you have people around you, your parents, your best friends, your siblings or whatever. And they're like, what? What are you going to do? Or did that happen at all?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think when I was dealing with my past, which I started working on my past, I think when I was 22 years old. So I think when I started understanding myself, I had to really understand my family, and I had to understand my parents. And one thing that I discovered is with my parents, they were both rebels. My father is an Afghan man who's seen more countries than many presidents in the world, and my mother has raised 6 kids without any of us like breaking a finger or getting a scratch. But over time, again, because they had to deal with so many issues in Iran, and they had to take 6 kids and leave Iran and then build a life here, these 2 rebels turn into extremely security needing, I don't know how to describe it, but 2 humans who are like, how can we become as secure as fast as we possibly can? So when it came to the time when I really had to make big choices for my life, like, what am I going to study at university, or where do I want to work, or do I want to take a year off after school and maybe travel? When it really comes to these decisions that would impact my life for the rest of my life, my parents were 2 very cautious people. And so when I launched the Benevolent series, and I really want to be truthful about it, because I do love my parents, absolutely. But this was the reaction. The reaction was, oh, you have your job. Oh, you have your car. You have your house. Okay, honey, you can go do whatever you want now. So it's sort of like they would only really enjoy what I was doing, or to really not be too scared, is when they thought, okay, I'm secure enough to go, like if I jumped off a cliff, I would like land somewhere. And so and then I thought, okay, and then the issue but then what it did to me is I figured, I can have parents who literally have heart attacks if I just quit my job and was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my next bill, but I need to go make this thing happen. It made me deal with my own thoughts, because I think if people have, even including your parents, if they don't disagree with you, that's not the issue. The issue is that there's a part of you that's also disagreeing with you. So I'm like, if my parents are really cautious now, and they won't like clap for me if I'm jumping off a cliff, that's fine. But can I clap for myself if I'm jumping off a cliff? And sometimes I have, and sometimes I haven't. So no, so there was no moment when they were like, we're so glad you're completely transitioning. I think I had to make a transition that I was comfortable with, and not have necessarily that directive support. Because and like I said, with what my parents went through, they really try to minimize risk at all costs. Mm-hmm.
Just like how parents are, like they're always watching out for the best of their kids. So thank you so much for so genuinely answering that question. I do want to say that starting a show, whether it's starting a show or whether it's just completely changing your career, or whatever else it is that people do in life, all of a sudden it seems like, oh wow, like what a big step. There's gonna be challenges, and there's gonna be struggles, and there's gonna be those moments of, oh my God, what have I done? Or how am I going to keep this going? Because I know for me, this happened, and many times I questioned my own ability of whether I could keep going. Like, how long can I keep this going? Like, and there's all these doubts and all these self-limiting beliefs that you have to get over, not mentioning everybody else around you who is also maybe doubting you and maybe voicing what they doubt more than what we'd like them to do. So how did you deal with that, or was there anything like that going on?
Absolutely. I think I recently read that a lot of particularly conversation and interview based podcasts, I read that most people quit within the first 6 months. And then when I read it, I was like, oh, okay, definitely. Like, if I were to quit, I would quit. Like, it would be, I could totally understand. But I think what's really allowed me to continue and not have thoughts of giving up at the moment or quitting, I think one is that I really experienced my life not doing something that was meaningful to me. And I mean, like, I'm constantly reminded of what it's like to feel like you're a robot, and that you're just working and working all the time and not really getting fulfilled. It's kind of like I'm so connected to that feeling of being so overwhelmed, because there's been times that if you had talked to me, I would tell you that I'm burned out, that I'm busy, that my schedule is full, but I was also extremely underwhelmed at the same time, because it wasn't nourishing my soul and it wasn't using everything that I thought I would be good at. So because I'm so connected to what life is like when you don't do the thing that kind of gives you life, that is still a very real world for me. The world of exhaustion and burnout and overwhelmed and underwhelmed at the same time. That's such a reality for me. Like, the feeling is so reality that anytime that I think about even quitting, I know exactly what I'm choosing between. And I know I would never choose that. And I think maybe if somebody gets so out of touch with the reality of some choices, we would quit all sorts of times. But I think anybody who's really dealt with the North American kind of workplace issues where it's just about being productive at all times and you get so little time off, that's a reality that's most people's reality. And I just came out of that reality. So to me, it's sort of like, I know exactly what I'm choosing between. And if I had come maybe from a completely different background, I would have thought, yeah, that was fun, I'm done with it. But to me, it's like, no, I know exactly why I chose what I chose.
I love that. It's so good because I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, first of all, there's people saying hi. I want to make sure that we acknowledge all our viewers. Nellie says, "Love you, Kate Pejman," with lots of kisses.
She's one of those women that
one of
those women.
Yeah. So when you were saying how, we feel so underwhelmed, but at the same time, we have all these things that we're doing. And when someone says, well, do this, immediately, I don't have time. Like, I don't have time. I can't add any more to my plate, right? So we hear that. And I was there. I had a coach. I remember my first coach, and she asked me to, I think she said something like, Del, why don't you start doing yoga? Because I said I like to do yoga. This was, so she said, try to do yoga. And I said, oh, but I don't have time. And so she said, what is it that you're doing that you don't have 10 minutes to give yourself? And I thought about that back then. It was like, well, I just know I don't have time. But that's exactly what it is. It's because you are doing all these things on autopilot, and you're not enjoying anything you're doing. You're not passionate about anything you're doing. So therefore, it just feels like you're just going through the motion. Like you said, you're surviving. You're a zombie. And so the minute you start doing something that you're passionate about, all of a sudden, sky's the limit. Oh my gosh, give me more. And so no wonder. So do you feel that way too today? Like with everything that you're doing, do people go, oh my God, how do you have time to do this? Like, how do you have time to add this? And you're like, but it just doesn't feel like work. It just feels like it's fun. Right?
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about the Benevolent series. And so give us maybe like one or two stories that you've done that have really touched you. And what do you get out of that?
It's hard. It's like trying to choose between your babies. So it would be really difficult, but maybe, but I think maybe one that I loved was I interviewed a story that doesn't seem like what a day to night difference of a life, but I interviewed somebody who had such a different life than me. She grew up in a very stable, like comfortable, no turmoil family, and she was like surrounded by love and care at all times. So when she became an adult, then life really hit her, and she became a single mom, a single parent, a single mom at a very young age. And she also immigrated in her adulthood to a different country. And so I had never thought about the different kind of challenges that somebody who I might have judged and been like, well, your childhood was great, so you don't have much to say, but how she had gone from working in a storage facility. Like, by the way, this woman was a fashionista, has a big fashion company. She just launched her second location in Tehran, which is very difficult to do in the COVID-19 times. And then like how she had carried her love with her and her joy with her for her life in a backpack through this journey. I just really touched me. I interviewed a supermodel who was from Congo, who had who her dad died when she was just a baby, and her mother couldn't afford the baby, so she gave the baby away, and then she became the most angry woman you can imagine. And like, she got discovered as a model, and she was still angry, and then she goes back to Congo in her adulthood and finds her mom, and sees how fragile her mom was, and how the lack of education, lack of support for girls in Congo had really taken life away from her mother. So now she's running one of the biggest schools in the world for girls in Congo. So I think the thing about Benevolent series, and I think you and I have this in common, which is why you can ask me any question and I would just like tell you anything, is because I think there was a part of me that was also frustrated that the same group of people would be on the news at all times. And if you were to clap for someone or to admire someone or to learn from someone, it would be like the same 10 people. So I thought, okay, we need to kind of expand the role models that the world has, especially with all the new challenges, which I'm not even going to get into, and COVID being one of many. I thought we just need to increase the sample size for who we consider role models and who we look at to give us guidance and to give us light. So the Benevolent series are stories that of human beings that perhaps might have never been shared in the world, and I just want people to have more role models to look at when they log on to their Facebook or Instagram, and not have it be the same 10 people.
Hey, well, soul sisters.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. So Yara says hi to you. One of your other girls.
Oh,
So, I wanted to say this in agreement to what you said, that I totally agree that, especially before the pandemic hit, and perhaps this is one of the blessings in the skies, that we looked to a lot of people as our superheroes, and they weren't really. And so the pandemic started, and all of a sudden, the people who were the true heroes of our society, of our community, the store clerks, who showed up to work every day, wearing their masks for like 15 hours at a time, dealing with nasty customers. And those became the heroes. The nurses, the doctors, and the police officers, the ordinary people who put themselves in the front lines. Those became the true heroes. And just like you, I'm a believer in bringing those stories out, and I think the world will become a better place, because more people will get to hear those stories. So this truly is a fantastic thing you're doing, Kate, and I admire you for it. So here you are starting this new venture, and what's a couple of things that came up for you that were roadblocks, that were not roadblocks because you came out of them, obviously, but something that was okay, this is a struggle, like, how do I get through this, and how did you get through it?
Well, the first one might sound so silly, but it was a big thing for me. I when Facebook came out, I was on Facebook I had a Facebook account, and then I remember Instagram came out like almost, I think, what it feels like a decade ago. And because I hadn't really, Benevolent series was existed in like a thought form, and even before a thought form, it lived in as just as a feeling. So because I hadn't come to the right time, it wasn't the right time, the right place for me, for the world, but mainly for me to start. I never really had an Instagram account. So I never joined Instagram for like a decade. And then the time came for me to launch the Benevolent series. And then I joined Instagram, and then it just like hit me how everything shows up as numbers. The number of views, the number of followers, the number of likes, how many times you post, how many times you you market something, or how many times you post things. And it just became sort of like, well, who's gonna listen to me, and who's gonna watch the show? And I think I had to deal with the fact that you just do what you do, and leave the world of numbers out of it. So I had to kind of stop comparing, and I had to stop feeling like I was behind, which I know everyone does, and it's kind of it's a concept, or like a pain that lives in your head more than an actual in the world. So I would say the world of numbers was very hard for me to be myself in, and to put my work out there, and to put these stories out there. So that was the first thing, because you're like, oh, I haven't been on this platform for 10 years, and other people have, and I'm just joining it after 10 years and saying, that's fine. That's totally fine, and we'll get over it. So that was the first thing. The other thing was, I think, like, I don't know if anyone can really relate to this, but I was trying to do this work without causing any discomfort for anyone else. So if I was interviewing somebody and asking them questions, I didn't want to, discomfort somebody who, like a cousin, or like or sibling, or like my parents, with how much of myself I was putting out there. And I think when you're putting your work out there, you feel like you have to present so much more than yourself, and you have to say the proper thing, and you have to not do anything that's too out, like you shouldn't say anything that's too out there. And so at some point I had to make sure that I say what I think is needed to say, and not have this conversation in my head that it might cause discomfort for other people, because I see how people talk about their jobs and how much they love their jobs, and they're like, so proud of it. But when I looked into that internal life, it's been a life of burnout, and people just feeling really unfulfilled and meaningless, and really have the impacts of that show up in all sorts of ways in their lives. So I had to say, okay, if I need to say that this culture of the workforce that we're living in, it's very toxic and no one talks about it. But when I talk to most of my friends, most of my family members, they're all complaining. Then I was like, why isn't nobody talking about this? So at some point I had to figure out, okay, I need to talk about the things that are standing out to me, and even if that causes discomfort for some people.
Thank you.
That's my short answer.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I relate. I relate to everything you're saying. This is really cool. And you do. At some point, I think you have to decide. Okay, what's really important to me. It's not really to hurt the people around me. It's not that. But I'm coming out from a place of love and compassion. And what I want to be is the authentic self. And I really want to bring up other people's stories. And if I have to share with you what's really inside of my heart, that's not to hurt anyone else. It's really just to allow that connection with you, so that you can connect with me and I can connect with you, and the whole world can connect to each other. Nellie says, you are most certainly doing that, Kate, bringing more role models to us that otherwise we would have not heard of them. So, yes, thank you. Robert J. Moore is here. He's my coach, actually. He says, I love ya, Dela. Love you back, Robert. Thank you. I have a viewer here who's asking a question, and I'm going to. It's in Farsi, but I don't want to miss this, and I want to take your take on this, Kate. And so, Adam is asking, dear Dela, please ask, how do we not succumb to a life that seems like it wants to knock us down. Because I'm asking you this question, Kate, because you've interviewed a lot of people who have had their own set of troubles. And I mean, sometimes you hear other people's stories and you're like, oh my God, how did you come out of this? Like, how did you get here? And Robert is one of those people. So when a question is asked like this, how do you answer that?
I think sometimes the issue with or if I were to talk from my own experience, I think the way to this is such a good example. So I think right around when COVID had happened, and I think I had other personal issues happening as well. I think I was in a dispute with a close friend of mine, and I'm so connected to my friends that anytime we have any issues, it really like feeds at my soul. And then, but it was also the beginning of COVID. And I remember when I was doing my research for one of my guests, and my research was about figuring out what they had done, what their life story was. And as I was doing the research, I thought, this research is at least making me feel better. I could interview the person, no one could watch it, or there might be technical issues, no one might watch it. The person would like maybe not care enough or whatever, but I thought this work is making me feel better. So I think the issues that what you could do is just figure out something that makes you feel better and just do that. And I think maybe the message of don't give up, because we live in a world where it's like, are you too old to do something? Do you have enough money to do something? This is the time to be a parent. This is a time to have a baby. This is a time to have savings. This is a time to, if you didn't make it until now, then forget it. You can't do it. And I think it's like this, it's like defeat before you even begin. And I said earlier that, most people who run a show, any kind of a show, quit within the first 6 months. And to give yourself a real chance, you have to really stay consistent. So stop comparing yourself and stop thinking that something is supposed to look a different way and you're supposed to be in a different place. And please, Lord, for the love of God, stop following all the crazy news that make us feel like the world is just a place to survive. And it is 99% of the time. But I think what we're fed, we don't question what is fed into our perspective. And if I were to sit right here and talk to Dela about all the issues in my own life, all the issues in the world, all the issues in Dela's world right now, we would just hang up and go like crawl into our beds. So I think the world isn't that bad, and just do something that makes you feel better. If it's feeding wild animals who might live close to your backyard, which a friend of mine does. A friend of mine juices and then takes the leftovers and throws them out so that wild animals could basically eat them. So I think the point is just do something that makes you feel better, and that will actually be quite extraordinary.
Thank you. Really well said. And sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes it feels like the world is just so against us. You look around you and there's like all this stuff is happening. And maybe you get hit with an illness. Maybe a loved one dies. A loved one gets diagnosed with something terrible. Maybe you lose a job. Maybe the bills get too overwhelming. Maybe someone you love is addicted. There's a lot of challenges in the world, and just this is super important. The the less we talk about it, right? The less we talk about it to the people we love. And so I want to be clear on this, because this happened to me in my own experience. I was dealing with a lot of stuff, a lot of crap. And I kept it to myself because I thought, I'm too ashamed to talk about it. This is a big stigma. You know, what are people going to think? And the moment I started sharing it, not because I wanted the sympathy, it was because I wanted information. So I was really trying to find help. And I started sharing what was happening in my own life with other people. I heard that other people's troubles were a lot bigger than mine. And so there's a lot of hope in that. There's a lot of solace in that. And I agree with you. You know, we get bombarded with news, and news is always bad news. Start listening to shows like this or the Benevolent series, and people who bring out the joy of life, people who try and give you what's positive, because there's a lot of that too. Is there not, Kate? There's a lot of positivity in the world.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't go into too much of information that might already be out there, but I think our brains are wired to like pick the dangerous things and the very awful things and the things that could hurt us so that we could survive them. And I think I read this recent article that said, we have memory, but the memory is there so that if a similar situation comes up, we would know how to deal with the hurt or the risk that it imposed. But that's all it's supposed to do. But I mean, we're wired to pay attention to the negative things, and it takes a lot of work on oneself to make decisions that will put you in a place where you're not that you're not digesting a lot of that. And that means unfollowing people that are negative and that are just like talking about all the dangers in the world, all the pages that are so full of drama, the pages that are so unrealistic. And so we have to make conscious decisions. But I would also just add that it does not happen overnight. We don't go from one end to the other. And so being patient with oneself and just making sure we give ourselves enough time to grow is, I think, so important. And there isn't this pressure of, oh my God, I'm not doing all the right things. I think there's too much of that happening, and there is a lot less conversation about you're fine, be patient, you'll get there, you have time. I remember there was a time that I was so burnt out, and I think most of the ladies who are commenting, Yara and Nelly, would speak to this, that when I was so overwhelmed, I wrote on a piece of paper that said that the gift of unlimited time has been given to you. And I had to write that for myself, and I had to like slap it across my laptop so I would see it all the time, because sort of like we're in a race to be better, to be smarter, to have everything so quickly. And I think it's such a toxic world that we live in. So just be patient, and you'll get there, and just do the things that will put you in a situation where you're looking at better things. For example, following Dela's voice, who's putting content that is really happy, positive, joyful, with a positive intention, and makes you just grow and become a better person. That's a page I recommend to follow. So.
And I definitely ditto to you. www.thebenevolentseries.com. It's scrolling right down the page. Follow Kate and follow everything she does to bring out all these amazing stories to the world. The stories that we really need to hear about. The more we surround ourselves with positive news, the better we feel. And you said that, like, do something that makes you feel good. What are some sort of things that you do that make you feel good, Kate, when you're in a, not so good place?
I think what I would have to share, and I think it has been such a bold presence during the whole period of this conversation. I would say I listen. I think most of us just talk a lot. We're constantly talking, and it takes a really it takes a different kind of a human being to prioritize listening. And so I did also want to acknowledge you, Dela, and say thank you for being a listener in this world, because most of us are talking. And I think you're doing listening. And that is, to me, listening is equals love. In my world, when people listen, that's love. And so I would say just listen to the good things, listen to other people's stories, listen instead of wanting to show a reaction right away or to make a decision right away. I think it would be just to say, you know what, I'm gonna do some listening for a little while, and that could mean watching specific people, asking your friends to share their stories with you, messaging someone and saying, this is what I'm going through, please let me, like, your advice would be useful. So I think listening is so healing in so many ways. So I recommend listening to everyone.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. And sometimes just listening to nothingness, just if you can do that, just listening to the silence, and letting that really uplift you. Thank you so much. Okay, so Nellie says, yes, love, I remember when you were burnt out. I can hardly imagine you being burnt out, Kate, because you're such a ball of energy and you're so bubbly and so joyful, and you just bring joy. I look at you and I'm like, that's joy. That's a hunk of joy right there sitting in front of me. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's awesome. And Nellie says, listen to get inspired by others. And Adam says, thanks, Doc. Thanks, Doc. Thanks, Doc. You're welcome. You're welcome. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Listen, we've been talking for an hour and we need to go. But I want to make sure that people get a chance to hear you for another minute for your words of wisdom, whatever comes to your mind that you want to leave everybody with. Take that minute now and please go ahead.
Well, I would say don't give up. Don't give up and keep working on your own benevolent story. It's the one you're going to love the most. I would also take the minute to say, to just acknowledge you, Dela, for being a listener in this world, and to all the listeners now or people who watch it later on. I think listening is one of the biggest gifts you can give to someone. So if you've been listening to our conversation for this long, I'm so grateful. I acknowledge you for your love, and the gift of listening that you've given to me, and a special gift to Dela, who's made that possible for all of us. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. And please, everyone, follow Kate and her beautiful work on her website, www.thebenevolentseries.com, or you can also find her on Facebook under Kate Pejman and also the Benevolent Series. And she's also on Instagram under the Benevolent Series. She's all over the place. So find her. You can find her, follow her. She's a beautiful soul who's doing amazing things for the world. And I'm so blessed to have met you today, Kate.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So when's your next show?
Well, we're just wrapping up season 1, but if there's a non-for-profit organization or if there's a business that has meant a lot to you, we are going to be showcasing those organizations, nonprofits or businesses, or even projects on the Benevolent Series social media, so that we can again, to acknowledge the gift of listening that we got for our season 1. I've lost count of the thousands of views that we've had. I will put that information out there at some point, but in order for me to give back to the gift of listening that I've had, we're going to be showcasing as many nonprofits and projects and businesses as we can. So if you know somebody or any organization, yours or not, just let us know.
Perfect. People, thank you so much for joining us today. The way you can support myself or Kate is to follow us on our social media, to share our videos and our interviews and our work, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Do you have a YouTube channel, Kate?
Yes, I do. It's called the Benevolent series.
Thank you. And mine is Dela's Voice. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, because that's the way you can support us in this journey. And also, as Kate said, if you know anyone who has a perfect story to be told, everybody's story is perfect, actually, but who has a story that they'd like to share with the world, yeah. Support. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate, for being here today and giving us so generously what you have so innately in you, which is all love and joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Dela. You're a magnificent, inspiring woman. I've been very touched by your work.
Thank you. Mwah. Bye. Till next time, everybody. And for those who have been watching, this has been another Dela's Voice, hoping to spark your soul. Till next time, stay blessed.